It's pretty easy in Victoria 3 to get tunnel visioned on the economic and social outcomes of your own country, but sometimes we forget that other countries do indeed exist on the map. Well, their existence isn't unknown to us, but instead relegated to the role of being either mere territories, as of yet unconquered, or rivals to be boxed in. What if instead we viewed these nations as something akin to children which we must raise so that they can live good lives and earn us street cred with all their accomplishments? Children that we can make entirely dependent on us so that they never leave. That is the goal of today's United States playthrough. Consider this challenge to be the other side of the same coin of the Confederate slave empire I did last video. The objective for this playthrough is significantly more quantifiable than that one. I'm going to be founding the Monroe Prosperity Sphere and getting all the nations of North and South America into my power block, whether as subjects or as partners. From there, we shall elevate all of them to either 100 million GDP or 5 GDP per capita, whichever is lower. We can achieve this by investing in our bloc members and ensuring that we have a market with enough demand that their industries can thrive. In terms of what counts for being within the Americas, we're counting all the nations whose capital is in the Americas, meaning I will not be bothering to take Guyana unless I really feel like it, and I won't bother liberating places like Jamaica. As you'll see later, building up tiny countries like those is actually really difficult. The ultimate question really is whether or not this playstyle is actually useful compared to just building in your own nation. Not really, no, but it's a fun playstyle, and hopefully an interesting look at some of the blunders that the AI can fall into when it comes to economy building. Let's create a beautiful world for at least one hemisphere of the planet. The beginning of this run is going to resemble a pretty standard America run in the sense that we're just going to build up like iron and coal and steel, and we're going to just make a really strong economy that we can then use to support ourselves in the future for when we start investing in other countries. So let's do that. Water 2 boiler to start because it's really, really good. And for buildings, we're going to focus on New York and Pennsylvania and Ohio because these states have some of the best resources in the game. So we're going to just drop a bunch of construction sectors, and then we will work on building up the iron and coal that's in these areas. America is the kind of country in Victoria 3 where you can more or less play them however you want and you'll probably be okay. There's not a lot of wrong ways to play them because they're just so powerful. Obviously, if you want to play the best you can possibly play, then yes, there are wrong ways to play. But it's not like you're going to be having a lot of trouble getting power and becoming strong as the United States. You have a lot of people in your country, you have a lot of resources in your country, and you also have a pretty good military. It looks small, but you're going to be conscripting a lot. In terms of how I'm going to handle Mexico, by the way, I'm still going to get them to 100 million GDP or 50 GDP per capita, but I'm also still going to be taking over my Manifest Destiny territory because, I don't know, it just feels weird to have America doesn't control all their borders. For the first election of the game, we have a very strong Whig party, which we're always happy to see. It's nice when the Whigs are powerful because then you can get to banning slavery faster. Oh, also my company. William Crampton's son sucks, so we're going to disband it. And we don't really have any other options, so we'll pick something else later. There's election. Daniel Webster's the new president, and we can put them in charge of the government. That's a pretty good set of interest groups. Let's see what we can pass. I mean, we could just go straight for laissez-faire. I think we'll start with something like dedicated police, just because it's very popular. Like, pretty much everyone wants it, except for the planters. But who cares about what they think, right? The metal conglomerate of New York. And, of course, we're going to grab this, because it's just so good. We have lots of iron mines, and we're going to need lots of iron. This is going to be a very high throughput building right off the bat, so we love to see that. The metal conglomerate is, of course, a basic company. It's not special in any way, but it is just really good to have. There's the water 2 boiler. This should help us a lot with our iron price. We're going to put that production method on pretty much every mine that we have because it's just that good. Dedicated police, very nice. We should see the power of the planters go down because of that. Not immensely, but a little bit. It might also take some time for it to register, but it will go down. For our next law, I think we do just rush for laissez-faire. Probably for the best. I mean, it's gonna upset the yeoman farmers a little bit, but it's okay. They can live with it. We got to study on laissez-faire. We love to see that. Of course, it's, you know, still quite a ways away before we pass it, but still, we're happy to see whatever progress we can get. By the way, you might be wondering why I didn't do the Opium War strategy, whereas America, you declare war on China and call Britain in for the opium port. I just kind of felt like I wanted to not do it. I don't know how to explain it. Just sometimes you're like, you know what? Like, it's okay. We'll do a relatively standard game instead of doing the crazy strategies. Obviously, it would be better to attack Qing and then call in the British and then get all the war goals on Qing that you want to get while the British do all the fighting. but it's okay. This isn't really meant to be a guide, it's more of a challenge run. Also, I forgot to click Manifest Destiny. I said I was so interested in clicking this because I was like, yeah, let's go and get the Infamy decay going right now, but then I forgot to click it, so real smart on my part. Here's labor movement. They are militant. They're not going to 100% though, so I'm not too worried. Hopefully we can pass this law before they hit actual militancy, or rather revolutionariness. I don't know what you'd call it, but the point where they hit 100% militancy, which makes them declare a civil war. Here's the election, by the way. It looks like the yeoman farmers did choose to stay with the Democrats, which is unfortunate. But at least the evangelicals left, which means that now I have more legitimacy. That's nice to see. I was hoping that these guys would leave the Democrats, but it is what it is. The Democrats do appear to be winning the election. That's gonna suck. I'd rather keep the Whigs in power if I can. I may even, I mean, depending on how much legitimacy we lose, I'm probably gonna keep the Whigs in power despite the Democrats winning the election. That is gonna make John Calhoun the president. And he's honestly probably better than Daniel Webster, because Daniel Webster is arrogant. But let's see if we can maybe replace him. See, we could real quick grab this guy, Pascal Biederman, unless there's a better guy. That sounds good to me. So we're going to bring him to the government. We're going to throw the Democrats in. Oh, never mind. We can't do it. Never mind. Okay, because these guys are revolutionary. That's so annoying. I was going to say, if we throw the Democrats in government for a second, then we make this guy the leader, which would make him the next president, and he's a market liberal, which would help us pass laissez-faire. But we can't. What's our legitimacy like? Let's see. So with John Calhoun as president, we still have 39 legitimacy. That's good enough to pass the law, but it's going to delay it a bit. It would have been real nice to get the market liberal in charge of the Democrats, but it is what it is. This labor movement's crazy, by the way. Look at how big it is. I'm trying to show it off, but there you go. The UI keeps popping up. That's a big civil war if it were to happen. We obviously don't want that. But the nice thing about having a labor movement is that we can use them to get tax reform basically immediately. So once we pass laissez-faire, we're going to go for proportional taxation right away, because it's pretty nice. Here we go, another chance to pass. Let's see, laissez-faire, 10 days. Oh, we got it. Okay, let's go. That's really, really awesome. It was a bit of a luck-based thing, so if you're trying to recreate this run, sorry if you get bad luck, but nice to have. For another company, I'm just going to go with the basic wood company, because, you know, these are like foundational goods for our market, so it's nice to have bonuses to them. The nice thing about getting bonuses to resources is that resources are inherently limited in the game, so getting more throughput on a resource is kind of increasing your maximum possible economic output compared to a bonus on, like, say, clothes, where you can, in theory, like, infinitely produce clothes, although you're limited by the sources of cotton and silk. But I mean, there's so much cotton and silk in the game, you're never gonna have to worry, whereas wood is much more limited. Anyway, to please labor movement, we're gonna immediately go for some tax reform. This will cool them off, so we'll do that. Proportional taxation will cut my revenue down, but that's okay, because the reason why we're trying to pass this is purely because it'll be more equitable. So we're gonna see our SOL increase because we're taxing in a more fair way. Rather than doing land taxes, we're going to focus more on income taxes and dividend taxes, which is a more reasonable way to tax people. Oh, so John Calhoun's about to be killed in the caning. Do I want to get rid of John Calhoun? I do think that I want to get rid of him, so let's cane him. Who do we get instead? Ebenezer Goulet, an aesthete and a master bureaucrat who's a moderate. Cool, we'll take that. There's pharmaceuticals, by the way. We're not going to try to pass public health care yet. We're going to wait until we're done passing the proportional taxation. But once that's done, you bet we'll go for it. I think it's about time that we attack Mexico now. We have, what are our relations at with them? So we have still less than 20, which we can still declare a conquest. Here's the interesting thing that I was going to explain before. If we try to do return state on Texas, we see that Great Britain could join, because they have an interest here. Now, this is where I look like an idiot, because normally France also has an interest here. If I were to, for example, do, like, I think make protectorate play, here we go. France would get involved in theory, because we're making a protectorate play, and that means that the play is going to be in the Mexico region, which is, like, here. France has an interest there, so they can join. If I declare the war for Mexican Texas, like so, do a return state, there's no interest for France here, so they can't join the war. So I can hit this, boom, and now you see that France isn't even an option to sway, but I can still hit make protectorate anyway, and this does not pull France in. It makes an anti-French society, and that's fine, but it does not pull France in. So that means that we can get away with attacking Mexico without needing to worry about France getting involved, which is what we will do. We're going to, of course, return all of my necessary states alongside making them a protectorate, and we'll add war operations, and then we're going to make a bunch of these primary war goals so that the Mexicans don't give in. We don't want them to surrender, we want them to fight us. Yeah, the reason I teach you that lesson about the diplomatic plays is not necessarily because you need it for the purpose of fighting against Mexico, but let's say you're doing a war in some other region of the world and you don't want France or Britain to be involved. Check and see first if you can start the war with a war goal that's not in interest area for either of the great powers. and then maybe you can get away with it with a much easier time because you won't have any interference. Just depends on who you're fighting. The nice thing about getting Mexico as a protectorate is it's going to put them into our power block, and that's going to help us get principles a lot faster, because for every recognized minor power that you have in, you get a lot more mandate growth. Also, there's our tax change. What else can we pass now? We could go for something like, I don't know, we could go for banning slavery right away, but I don't think we're going to be able to do it, so I'm not going to bother. Alright, I want to do healthcare, right? Yeah, we're going to do public health insurance, of course. Totally forgot that we were still doing this. Yeah, the reason why we can pass this pretty easily is because despite the industrialists not liking it, the evangelicals like it. Alongside, I think the labor movement does too, so the labor movement's going to keep us going as well. So that's nice. Thanks, labor movement. Also, new company. Probably going to go for nothing too special, probably just the coal and sulfur one. Yeah, that sounds good. Again, it's not like it's super duper good, but it's just giving us more throughput on coal, and coal is just really nice. We've made it to Mexico at this point, and now it's just a matter of waiting till we win. Also, a new election. It looks like the parties got all split up. Let's see if we can reorganize. So the Whigs are going to gain the intelligence. Okay, the Whigs are completely dominant now. Wow, okay, sure. Throw them in there. I think for now we just have to go like this for legitimacy purposes, and then we'll put the Whigs in later. The Whigs are probably going to get a landslide victory. Yeah, that's a pretty immense victory there. Maybe we can send a peace deal. Sometimes they want to take a peace deal early. Not quite, no. That's okay. Next tick, they should be willing to. There we go. Beautiful. So you got all of our claimed states back. As you can see, we have Mexico, our protectorate, and now we'll continue to improve relations again. And we're looking pretty good. The nice thing about Mexico as a protectorate is that they do get rubber eventually, so we're going to use them for a bit of rubber. In the past, they were good because they have dyes in their market, whereas you didn't, but now there was an update. I don't remember which one it was, but they put dyes in South Carolina and I think in like Alabama and stuff. So you end up with actually having access to dyes as America, whereas in the past you didn't. I think now we could change government over. This is obviously quite the government, I must say. It's a lot of interest groups all at once, but I don't have a problem with it, right? I'm going to increase construction pretty soon. I want to keep an eye on my investment. It looks like so far our investment pool is staying at a level it should be. One, like, quick and dirty piece of advice, and what I mean by that is, like, this doesn't always apply completely, but it's a nice heuristic to start with, is that if your investment pool is doing this, it's good, because it means that you have enough construction that your investment pool is able to make use of itself and not just piling up money. If your investment pool is looking like your GDP graph, ignore that this is a very unimpressive GDP graph, but if it's looking like this, where it's kind of constantly growing, then you have a problem. Because it means that your capitalists don't have enough construction sectors to make use of their money. Whenever you see something like that happening, where you're going to have like too much reinvestment and not enough construction sectors for it, you probably just want to make more construction. The other heuristic can be if you ever have a positive balance, you want to make more construction, but that one's a little bit riskier. I tend to base off of the investment pool instead, which is a lot safer, especially on laissez-faire, where 75% of your construction will be private sector. Here's a tech, by the way. I'm just kind of grabbing all the tier 2 techs in like whatever order, and for tier 3, I'm gonna really want to get like civilizing mission so I can start conquering overseas for less infamy, and I also want to get human rights. Despite having a 73% chance of success, 20% chance of an advance, and a 5% chance of a stall, I have still managed to get the stall. That sucks. I act like I'm so outraged by the bad luck, but also, I'm a pretty lucky player most of the time, so who am I complaining about? Or rather, what am I complaining about? The universities are very nearly done. I'm actually gonna probably shrink down how many we're making because it's just too overkill and it takes too long. You can see here that with 22 universities, we have 143 innovation out of 148 of our cap, so we're already going over the cap. Now, to be fair, going over the cap is still nice because you get more technology spread when you're over the cap, regardless of what your actual cap is. So it's not like it's a bad thing to overbuild, but I'd rather focus on building other stuff right now. We're doing the universities because getting tech is really nice, but we'd rather build other stuff. Also, there's the healthcare. We're going to immediately just max that out as much as we can because the SOL, the mortality, the pollution effect reduction, all of it is just so good. With higher SOL, we can afford to charge higher taxes. So we're not going to raise taxes yet, but we will very soon. But we should also be mapping the American Western Frontier. Let's do that. Anyone here an explorer? Doesn't look like it. I guess we'll send out Leland Lowell. Sure. Whenever I do expeditions, I pretty much always just take the highest risk options in the hopes of getting it done as fast as possible. So that's my strategy. I don't really know what the actually good strategy is. I just always take the best options, or rather the riskiest ones with the best possible outcomes, even if they have the worst negative outcomes. That's one phase of slavery ban enacted. So far, the secession is making a lot of progress relatively quickly in a very scary pace. So maybe we consider canceling soon. So far, we've gotten very lucky. We haven't taken any peril on the expedition. Hopefully, we get the Oregon Trail as our very first event from completing this. If you don't, though, you have to do it again so you get the Oregon Trail. It's a 33% chance, so good luck, I guess. When I say you have to do it again, I'm referring to the Oregon Treaty with Britain, where in order to get Idaho, Washington, and Oregon for free off of Britain, you have to find the Oregon Trail, which is one of 3 possible outcomes for completing the expedition. We got the Oregon Trail, okay. I believe we don't get the treaty until we complete the Mexican cession, which means we have to finish colonizing a bunch of stuff. But basically, once we finish colonizing all this stuff, we're going to breakfully gain a lot of land all at once. So that'll be cool. I do think we're going to have to cancel this law passing, though. I really don't want to trigger a civil war. Obviously, like, fighting the American Civil War does get you some nice flavor, and it can get you access to Afro-American primary culture, which is useful. But we'd have to pass multiculturalism for that, and I just don't really see that happening in the current state of the game. So yeah, check this out, by the way. I just peeked over at India, and it looks like the EIC is getting destroyed. It's possible we're going to have a legitimately free India this run, and not one that's orchestrated by a player. But let's see. It's very rare that the British fail to defend India from the princely states. But this could be one of those rare opportunities where it does happen. The year is 1850. Just to give you a quick check-in on how we're doing, it's been 14 years in-game. We've got almost 35 million GDP, which is okay. It definitely could be better. We've got 165 construction points. We've got a lot of universities. This is one thing that I'm always happy to see, is we have a lot of universities, so we're getting tech real fast. We have 12.6 SOL, and we're doing, I'd say, pretty okay. We definitely could be doing more aggressive moves. Like, for example, we could have been conquering China this whole time, but I'm going to actually wait till we get civilizing mission, and maybe even wait till we're at multilateral alliances, and then we can get a bunch of infamy generation reductions, so we can start conquering people, like, for super cheap. Maybe even I'll stack it with the colonial affairs principle over here to get more reduction when attacking unrecognized people. We'll see, though. We'll see. I'm not sure how conquest heavy will go in this run, because we could also just focus on the Americas, right? We don't necessarily even have to go to Asia or Africa. So, let's be honest here. This run is supposed to be focused on elevating the Americas, and I will get there, don't worry, but I definitely was being overly ambitious. Look at me talking about conquering overseas and stuff. The truth is, I'm lazy as hell in Victoria 3, and I'm going to end up just playing tall until I have enough of an economy to justify building in the Americas. To save you a bit of time, given how long this run has been going on, I'm going to skip ahead beyond a lot of this economic build-up phase, since really, it's the same America gameplay you've probably seen 1,000 times. It's just building iron, coal, steel, engines, and railways, and looping that until I run out of people to employ, and then waiting for immigrants so I can resume the loop. Let's jump to something exciting. Now that we only have 4 infamy, I'm actually going to start, I think, kind of marching my way through Central America. Let's tackle, like, Guatemala. But in order to keep with the theme of the run, I'm going to just make them a protectorate. I'm not going to just conquer them outright, even though it's probably better to conquer them outright. We're going to see if we can elevate Guatemala to have 5 GDP per capita. I probably can't get them 100 million GDP flat. That would be quite insane. But we can try to get them 5 GDP per capita. Sounds good. To calculate that for you, that'd be approximately like 2.8 million GDP, which is probably doable, maybe. They chose to back down, it looks like, so that's nice. That means you get them for free. They're going to be pretty upset with us, but that's okay. But I get fixed over time. Let's just go for the next one. Let's go for Honduras. No one will join, hopefully. Looks like Honduras won't give in as easily as Guatemala did. Let's see. They could still back down. They can still back down to the last part of the war, but it looks like they will not be backing down. Let's do this. Should be a very easy landing, and while that's going on, let's work on Nicaragua next. El Salvador joins them. That's okay. I'll probably just make them a protectorate as well. Who else joined? Who's that? That's also New Granada. That's actually beautiful, because that means that now I can add a war goal to New Granada without anyone else joining the war. So we actually love to see that. We're going to wait till most of the great powers declare neutrality, just in case they choose they want to get involved after we put war goals on New Granada. We have a defensive pact with Britain, though, so they can't fight against us. So we're going to do New Granada Protectorate plus El Salvador Protectorate, and then we'll also add war operations to both. That's going to be really nice for us to be able to get control of New Granada so easily. But I think we'll probably start with New Granada in terms of who to attack first. We want to get them out of the war ASAP, because they're kind of the biggest target. Then we'll go for Nicaragua, then San Salvador. As you can see, it's very easy to land because there's nobody garrisoned there. And then we might be able to push in here before their army even makes it to the front. Let's see. We do. Then we get to the capital. We almost managed to fully occupy New Granada before their army could even arrive to contest the front. which is of course like total BS. And if I was playing New Granada, I'd be pissed. But I'm playing America, so I'm happy. So we just got steel construction, by the way, a moment ago. And steel construction is really, really strong, but you gotta prepare for it before you swap over. So we're gonna overbuild some steel. We're gonna overbuild some glass. Because we, although aren't gonna make great profits on this stuff, we're going to need it later. So we will do it now, rather than wait till it's like already causing massive budget problems for us. I'll put it all in Pennsylvania. The hope is that we can get enough migrants here to fill in the jobs required there, which we should be able to. It might take a bit, but eventually we will. There we go. That's all of New Granada completely occupied, but they won't capitulate until we take control of Nicaragua. I'm going to do San Salvador first, though, because, I don't know, we can devastate New Granada just for spite, I guess. There's San Salvador. Now let's go to Nicaragua. Of course, Nicaragua is on the other side. We can't invade over here. We have to invade from over here. That's real funny. We're landing in Nicaragua now. Should be pretty easy. There we go. That war has ended. We look at our market now. Looking pretty nice, to be honest. Not bad at all. Unfortunately, we don't have the influence to improve with everyone, so that sucks. And I suppose we can just keep going, right? I mean, there's still Costa Rica and Chiapas to grab, so let's do that. Costa Rica backs down. That's fine with me. Alright, now that the steel mills have mostly built, I'm going to swap over to steel construction. It's going to be painful for a bit, because whenever you swap the construction types, you're going to obviously have shortages in your market until the market kind of reacts to the new demand. So a quarter, a third of a million deficit is painful, but it's okay. We can tolerate it for a little while. We are probably going to raise taxes to try and keep ourselves afloat during that time. Also, the Oregon Treaty. Boom. Love to see that. We can immediately start incorporating all these states, by the way. In fact, we have a lot of states to incorporate, and we have all this bureaucracy that we can use, so why not? The year is 1857, and we've hit 50 million GDP, by the way. We just dropped below 50 million. Never mind. Cancel the celebrations. But the point is that we're at the 50 million GDP mark or so. That big spike right there is literally from going to steel construction. It's the combination of now we can build faster, so our GDP accelerates faster, and the fact that we spiked the price of valuable goods like steel and glass and explosives, which is because we're using them for construction. Now that I've got a pretty significant economy and a lot of construction points, we're getting to the point where it's time to really focus in on the actual completion of the goal of this run. That is, in case you forgot, to bring every American nation to either 100 million GDP or 5 GDP per capita, whichever is easier. I've been slowly making subjects out of the American nations, as you've seen, and before skipping ahead a bit, I'll give you some highlights. We banned slavery without a civil war in July of 1858, but then, a few years later, the activism on the slavery movement somehow climbed back up to 100%, which is pretty funny to me. I wonder what happened in the 3 years since slavery was banned to suddenly make the slavers decide that actually no, abolition should not be tolerated at all. It's also a very weirdly shaped CSA. While dealing with the Confederates, I conquered Sindh, which I'm going to use as a massive opium farm later on. The CSA was then defeated, and I began reintegrating the South. Most of Reconstruction was just economy building, until of course we got our hands on Joshua Norton, who I later used to pass multiculturalism despite having thought it wouldn't be possible early on in the game. It was definitely a lucky pass given how much stall chance I had, but a win is a win. Shortly after, starting around November of 1869, I got started on actually building up my subjects, particularly Mexico, and this is where I'd learned that this whole challenge is a bit tougher than I'd have expected. Already on to study with monarchy, feels good, man. Oh, and extra note, because I put Joshua Norton in charge of the petite bourgeoisie to pass multiculturalism, I had the opportunity to make him king. So looking at Mexico's GDP here, we haven't actually managed to increase it that much, and that's because probably, I'm gonna guess before I even look, they are not employing in the iron mines very well. That's what I'm gonna guess. I didn't build any of these. Where are the iron mines that I built? They up here? Yes, okay. Yeah, they're just not employing. Okay. And I can't subsidize them for them. So this is where things get complicated, is I need to spike the price of iron. It turns out that getting my subjects to actually employ up is difficult, and that's because their businesses are having to compete with mine. After all, my iron mines are doing amazingly since I set up a good economy for myself, and that means that iron's price is pretty well balanced. In order for Mexico to reasonably find a way to make a profit on the iron mines I've built up for them, they'll need to either subsidize them till they get enough of an economy of skill bonus to actually compete, or they'll need the price of iron to go high enough to actually make these mines worth employing. The better alternative is to try and build up industries in my subjects which I don't dominate quite as much, or to give each of them their own market where my goods can't so completely dominate them. The problem with granting away all these markets would be the mental labor of trying to make a bunch of tiny economies for each of these nations, and the fact that they'd lose access to all my cheap resources. I don't know if it would have been wiser to go down that path, but ultimately, I chose to invest in other industries for them. Here comes monarchy. 99% chance to pass. Anyone want to make any bets? Do you think I'm going to pass it? Let's see. Yeah, I passed it. Okay, great. This is Joshua Norton, Emperor Norton. That's an achievement, by the way. I just already have the achievement, so it doesn't pop. But that is, in fact, an achievement to do that. Now that we have a king, I don't know. I guess that's cool. It doesn't really change much, but it gives us some more authority, which is nice. Maybe the best way to increase the GDP on Mexico would be to just build a bunch of agricultural goods. Like, what if I make all these guys make agricultural goods, and then I just make, like, stuff that uses those goods? So I make the demand and they make the supply? You do something like that? Like, I could just spam, like, 40 dye plantations here or something? Maybe that would be good? The problem is that dyes don't give a whole lot of GDP compared to, like, iron. Like, mines give a lot more GDP compared to just random agricultural resources. Let's see. Maybe we can drop some steel mills in Bajío in a second. Once we get more construction going to give it some demand. This might be a very much so failed challenge run, honestly. We'll see. Because it is going to be difficult to get all these guys up to a huge GDP, to be totally honest with you. There is, of course, the GDP per capita alternative, which we could probably go to Los Altos and quickly get them a huge GDP per capita by just giving them, like, one lumber mill to work in. Let's build their lumber mills and they can work in there, and that should honestly give them a bunch of GDP per capita. We're number 1 GDP now, by the way, so we've got a pretty strong economy going here. Okay, well, number 2 now, but we're kind of neck and neck with the British Raj. I'm sure we'll pass them in a little while. We have a bunch of Indians coming to the country. It's good. And Greeks now. It just never ends, the mass migrations at this point. Like, now it doesn't stop. It's unending mass migrations. Speaking of which, let's actually make that even better. Let's just put even more greener grass decrees. You know, like, sure, these are good states, I guess. They're just not employing, dude. You gotta employ up, my man. This is going to be way tougher than I thought it was going to be, wasn't it? I thought it would just be as simple as like, oh, drop like 100 textile mills somewhere, then they'll all employ up and then they'll be fine. I still had some more countries in South America to take over, so while contemplating how best to actually solve this challenge, I went after them. See if we can land in Peru, Bolivia. Might be kind of difficult, to be totally honest, because I know that 42 battalions is something to worry about. Not nothing. Also, we don't even have enough ships. Oh my goodness, dude. I'm throwing. Oh, we need to make some more ships. So I should probably make some steam ships. Maybe we land in like Argentina first. Argentina's going to be a lot easier to land in. We could do like Chile and Argentina. Yeah, like Chile should be an easy clap. Don't have an interest there though, so let's get that going real quick. Alright, we got Mexico's GDP up to 16.1 million. Okay, okay. Even though we're far. Also, look at this election. Oh my goodness. I guess we can let the trade unions in. Sure, that sounds good actually. So right now, this is the current electoral graph. It's just the Republican Party. The Democrats are totally gone, and this is the current clout level. Just insane. Also, cocaine addict Joshua Norton. That's cool. But just an insane set of interest groups right now. Oh, there's our Zeppelins, by the way. Zeppelins go really hard for the extra mappy. I'm gonna grab, I guess, corporate governance, plus international stock exchange, plus central planning, and then into macroeconomics. That's gonna give us even more mappy, plus another company. Election's over. Of course, the Republicans won with 98.8% of the votes. Don't question it. The secret police had nothing to do with that outcome. Okay, it's just a really popular party. Nothing more to say about it. I wish I was joking, but actually, like, it is just a really popular party for whatever reason. I guess because the king is leading it. A very popular king, 135 popularity. I think New Granada has access to opium, right? Yeah, so we should definitely build in here. Again, the problem is like, they're not going to subsidize the railways, so we can't. Is there anywhere else we can build? Do they have any population? They got no people here, man. They're not subsidizing their railways. I actually can't prop up their countries unless they subsidize their railways. Alright, we got a border now with Peru, Bolivia. That's good. Hopefully we can push into their capital real quick before anyone gets here. Okay, people have gotten here. The enemy has arrived. Never mind. Let's increase our wages, maybe? That sounds good. Bro just increased the government wages when he meant to increase the military wages. What a foolish idiot. What a completely room temperature IQ move. And I'm not talking about Fahrenheit, pal. I believe, by the way, with our current tolerance levels, we're probably not assimilating, like, literally any pops, right? Like, I think that... Okay, no, we are assimilating some. Okay, only the ones that are level 4, because they're recent immigrants, yeah. So once they settle in, like these Swedes, they're not going to assimilate. So we're going to have a huge cultural mosaic going here. America playthroughs are always fun for that reason, I find, because crazy stuff happens, like, every playthrough. It's unavoidable, it feels like. You're always getting some crazy stuff going on. Although, so far, we are Yankifying most of the country pretty effectively. Landing in Chile, pretty easy. Poor visibility versus good visibility is painful, but no big deal. There's the end of Chile. Okay. Now, I think our best bet in order to beat Peru, Bolivia... Actually, they only have 28 units now. I think we can just invade with our, like, 45 or whatever. Let's try it. Let's go over here. I think we can beat 28 with 45 with no support penalty or anything. Sounds good. And I'm going to keep building up in Mexico now. We're going to try doing agricultural goods and see if that's going to be a better way to get them to get more GDP. So they have 120,000 peasants in Jalisco, and we can just make them make grain, I guess. What's a good thing to make here? I guess maybe a bit of a few things. We'll do like 10 coffee. He is subsidizing the railways. Thank you for that. Do like 30 coffee, a little bit of grain, and then some dyes. Finish off with more coffee? Sure. The coffee looks profitable, so let's do that and see how it goes. We'll see how much that spikes their economy. Hopefully it does quite a bit. Here's the market now, by the way. We're going to connect up the market in the south through Peru, Bolivia soon. But yeah, we're looking pretty good. Once we take Canada from the British, then we're pretty much done with the biggest enemy of the campaign. Because Brazil is going to be like a bit of a tough nut to crack, but not too bad. But then obviously these guys are like nothing, and we're not worrying about Guyana, because like I said in the beginning of the video, we're not counting Europeans that happen to have land in the middle of South America. Canada sometimes can reach 100 million GDP by itself. I might not even have to intervene with Canada. They actually can get pretty powerful just on their own. Fortunately, we're losing this battle. Oh, they moved all their troops there. Okay, you know what? Overlord actions. We're gonna enforce military access on you, and we're gonna cancel the naval invasion. And you guys are going to go here. We're just going to invade through Chile. That's probably going to be our best bet. They did just abandon the front, though. Okay, you know what? They just abandoned their front. They abandoned their homes. Hold on. Never mind. Naval invasion's back on the menu. So yeah, they chose to just leave their capital completely unoccupied. So we're just going to land back there. I say their capital, I mean their capital region. La Paz is their capital, but I love how fronts work. Only when they work in my favor, though. When the enemy uses front systems against me, I hate it. But when I get to use it against them, they're wonderful and they're perfect. Paradox change nothing. Keep them exactly how they are. Only when they work for me, though. Also, we finished the reconstruction. As you can see here, we lose Dixie but gain Afro-American. A worthy trade, in my eyes. Also, we can repopulate the West again. There's Peru, Bolivia. Sick. For relations. There we go. And now we have a nice long strip of American market. If I wanted to grab Canada, it would probably cost quite a bit of infamy. 38.8. It's actually not as bad as I thought it would be, to be honest. We'd have to betray the British, though, who we're currently friends with. Just fine with me, to be honest. I'm not really ready to fight the British is the problem. Right now, they would just steamroll me. We're going to want to get more military research before we do that. So we're finishing up a ton of coffee plantations here in Jalisco, and we're hoping that this will give them a lot of GDP. To get an idea of maybe about how much it is, look at this graph. It's a pretty nice little jump, but it's not as much as I was hoping for, to be honest. I'm thinking I'd like to get Canada off of the UK, but the problem is just that they're really strong. I want to do it, but right now I just lose. So I think we are going to have to just wait until we get more technology to do it. Just it is what it is. Having to wait kind of sucks, but because the reason why it sucks to wait is because the longer we wait, the more population Canada gets, and as such, the more infamy they're going to cost. On the flip side, the more population they get, the better of a subject they are for me to take, but I'd rather not get too much infamy if I can avoid it. Just got myself international exchange standards. This tech isn't a hugely game-changing piece of technology, but it's nice to get a little loan interest reduction, and it's nice to get some more minting, because it just helps you keep your budget a little bit higher. Thanks to a random event that we just got, by the way, we now have 0% interest, which means that loans don't even cost anything. Unfortunately, the national dividends event thing doesn't last forever, but it lasts for a bit. I think it's for like a couple years. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, see, 5 years. That's 5 years of not paying any interest. Pretty cool. I'm gonna see if I can attack Uruguay here, because I'm hoping actually that New Granada will join the war, and then I can reduce their autonomy without having any other great powers get involved. So it's kind of like a little bit of a bait war, I guess you could say. After we get the central planning tech and the macroeconomics tech, and then finally the dynamite tech, which is extremely good, then I'm going to focus on getting military tech so we can try to contest Britain. Thanks to my immense number of universities, we can actually research this stuff pretty fast. I'm going to try to go for trench works and wargaming before we go to war. Wargaming gives a flat offense bonus to your entire army, plus a new training method so we can get more men in the field faster. And trench works provides a pretty nice piece of infantry, the trench infantry, which is good for defense, We can use that to hold off against the British till they run out of manpower, and then we attack them back. I think alongside that, maybe we get landing craft, or if we want to land in London, that'd be nice. And there's central planning, by the way. It's gonna take 4 years to get macroeconomics, because we're getting it ahead of time, but it's totally worth it, because it's just that good of a tech. There's Uruguay. Unfortunately, we didn't get New Granada into the war, so it was not super useful to get them. I mean, well, the challenge, of course, is useful, because we have to start investing in them, but it's okay. I'm going to start reducing autonomy on some folks, so you see I made Mexico into a puppet. I'm doing this because I've kind of accepted that places like New Granada are always going to be like max liberty desire because of the level of lobbies over there that are just completely destroying my liberty desire problem. So I'd rather just maybe make some puppets wherever I can, just to help with my budget. I guess we can get like... I mean, Los Altos is tiny, so I don't really want to even bother lowering theirs, but like maybe Honduras is okay? Can't even lower theirs. Okay, well, Nicaragua it is. Cool. I think I can handle fighting Spain. So I'm thinking I'm going to transfer Cuba. So it looks like no one's going to get involved. We can easily take Cuba. That'll be a nice little bit of land that we'll want to get. Cuba actually has a lot of like good resources in it that make it very much so worth conquering. So we're happy to do it. The French Empire sides with Spain. Okay, well that is not good. That is... I said that maybe the Great Powers wouldn't get involved. I was wrong. Because it looks like they would like to very much so get involved. Well, our best bet is probably to make a new army, which is going to be filled with conscripts that we can just use to defend ourselves from the French, because they're probably going to send naval invasions against us. Defensive strategist, this guy looks good. Mark them all as defense, and immediately get conscripting as soon as we can. It's cool. It's going to be very expensive, but claiming Cuba is worthwhile, I guess. And we'll split up this army as we need to, if we need to, when the French send over their naval invasions. We'll focus on just capitulating Spain as fast as we can. France does control Guyana, so you know what I can do? I could just quickly conquer French Guyana, just so we can clean up the borders a bit. You know what? Let's do it. It's very low infamy. Down for it. Although I hadn't made it a requirement to take over Guyana from the Europeans, this was an opportunity I didn't see any reason to pass up, and it could be helpful for when we go after Brazil in the future anyway, so I consider it to have been wise to take a piece of Guyana off the French. First, we're going to naval invade French Guyana, because we just want to get the war score ticking on France as soon as possible so they capitulate, and then we'll go worry about Cuba. So far, no naval invasion. We're glad to see that. Looks like it's because France is busy fighting in Africa against the British. That's good timing. And on cue, of course, there's the naval invasion from Portugal. Okay. Are they a subject? Yeah, okay, looks like they're a subject of the French. Interesting. Or of Spain, sorry. They're in the French market, though. Must be a power block. Yes, wow, okay, that's actually a pretty scary power block, to be honest with you. That's pretty good. That's something. If they can get Italy in that power block too, that'd be insane. Anyway, time to go and invade Cuba. Pretty sure these guys can defend against whatever Portugal is sending over, so I'm not worried. As you can see, the defense is quite easy. They have a naval penalty, I don't. I have good units, they don't. It's quite easy to defend. We've almost landed in Cuba. We're at 99% landing progress. Very funny. The good one game. Hilarious. With this battle, we should land, though, and then we'll start taking the war score on Spain pretty quickly. With France, it'll take a long time for them to capitulate because we just don't inflict that much war exhaustion on them. But it is what it is. Maybe we can accelerate things if we can land in them, but I don't think that's going to happen. I have my doubts, let's say. We are the #1 GDP, by the way. We have been for a while, but just to give you a bit of a, skill check, I guess. We're at 150 million GDP as of 1880. And keep in mind that in terms of the power block, it's significantly more than that. Power block-wise, we're at 201 million, which is still behind the British, but we'll catch up. Speaking of power block, turns out I had a mandate that I wasn't using. I guess we can just grab internal trade 3. Looks good to me. My navy destroys the French navy. Holy crap. You see that casualty ratio? This is not Holy 4, so this doesn't matter as much, but we have, 500 or so casualties to, 6,000. Absolutely insane. Anyone remember the really old patches of Victoria 3? Where if you occupied any state of a country, you would start ticking war operations on them. So if you ever wanted money, you just attack France and defend your own coast while you occupy Guyana, and it's free money. Those are the days, man. I also realized that France has land in the West Indies. We should have probably grabbed this as well in this war, but it's okay. Just going through right now and updating all my production methods. I kind of forgot to do it a while ago. Every once in a while, it can be good just to scroll through your list of buildings to make sure everything is up to date. even if you don't necessarily have the resources to put everything up to date, like let's say you're missing like steam trawlers or whatever in your market, you probably want to do it anyway, because worst case scenario, I guess you take a small negative to your output, but best case scenario, you're now stimulating your economy to make new buildings, so you're going to see the missing production, they're going to try to fill it. So it's pretty nice.
Eventually, the war with Spain and France did end, but it took forever, and it was mostly just waiting around since I was too scared to try and actually land in Europe. Regardless, claiming Cuba came with a rare interaction that I got to explain.
Looks like the Cubans were having a uprising in Puerto Rico, and the way that wars with subjects work is that so long as the subject's overlord is still in the war, they'll never actually capitulate. Once we took over Cuba from Spain, that made the overlord that was in the war, which was Spain, no longer like the overlord of Cuba, which meant that they were allowed to capitulate. So now we just have like an independent Puerto Rico, but it's called Santo Domingo. So it's like the Dominican Republic, but it's not on Hispaniola. And I say we just, you know, turn that into an American protectorate, of course. We're also almost done with the France War. In fact, actually, we are done with the France War, so that's cool. That gets us control of Guyana. Very cool. And it looks like the Dominican Republic backed down. I didn't even notice. It's busy building stuff. But yes, they backed down. So now we have control over Puerto Rico. It kind of sucks to take on the extra infamy for, like, no reason. But, you know, it's still something, I guess. It gives us authority, at least, because we have vassalization on. So because of that, we do at least get the authority, but it's a little bit meh. Brazil's looking like they're quite low on prestige, so I'm feeling ready to try and make them into a protectorate. I'm going to go for it. Obviously, Brazil is a bit of a tougher nut to crack than the other nations of South America, but they're only going to get potentially Belgium's support, and then maybe New Granada, in which case that's an easy reduced autonomy play, so let's go for it. We even have a land border in Guyana, which makes this war much easier, because you don't have to land there. The question is, do we want to use the land border, or do we want to use it as a distraction as land in Rio de Janeiro? I think we're just going to land in Rio de Janeiro. Or maybe the Brazilians will just back down. That could also happen. New Granada does side with Brazil. Okay. I will reduce your autonomy for 3 infamy. Absolutely. Do that in a second anyway. Here comes the landing in Panama. There's no one here to protest it. Or rather, protect it. I think that's what I was going for. So we just land, and then we'll be able to get to the capital real fast. New Granada won't take very long to capitulate, because we've occupied basically like their entire country. So their war exhaustion will stack up pretty fast. They didn't even get a chance to get to the front before we almost completely fully occupied them. That's pretty... Wow, they actually didn't get to the front at all. We're going to be able to get to the Brazilian front before they have a chance of actually being able to defend themselves. That's something. No one can get to the front. No one can get here before we're able to push through to the next state. This is ridiculous. Who needs to do naval invasions when you can actually just, like, push too fast? Maybe someone's gonna get here. Nope, they didn't get there. They almost made it. They were so close. This is ridiculous. Yep, we're almost at Rio de Janeiro. And here we go. We're about to take the capital. Very nice. Still no one here. Okay, yep, well, that's... Yep. We've almost occupied the entire country. From just marching through Panama. Okay, they have got troops to the front now. They did it. They managed to get there. Very, very cool. I'm sorry, I'm being a little bit of a troll. I just... Whenever this stuff happens, I can't help but just lose my mind at how hilarious it is. We also just got macroeconomics, and I didn't even mention it because I was talking about something else. Macroeconomics means that now we have another company slot, and we have more MAPI. And with more MAPI, we can effectively make every building that we make more profitable, as well as providing more SOL for the pops. So it's really nice.
In case it's someone's first time hearing about Victoria 3's mechanics, MAPI is an acronym for Market Access Price Impact, and determines the difference in price for goods sold between states. It's usually around 85% or so, but can be increased using technology and rivers. It can be decreased by not having enough infrastructure. MAPI is important because when any good is purchased, the price paid for it is modified by the MAPI number, but the additional cost does not generate profits for the business that the good was bought for. Essentially, if MAPI is 90%, let's say, then 10% of the money spent on a good that was bought is destroyed, vanished, thrown into hell, and so on. We'd like to avoid wasting money wherever possible, hence why macroeconomics is so valuable, since it increases MAPI across the board by 5% in all states.
And Brazil capitulated, it looks like. That's good. Brazil is now a subject. It's a big nation to add to the market. Love to see that. We're having a lot of infrastructure problems across all of South America, and this is probably a product of the AI's unwillingness to subsidize the railways, which means that I'm not sure what I can realistically do about any of this. It's going to make getting their GDP higher very difficult, but I will try. We nonetheless have almost put all of the Americas into our market, by the way. What's left is Canada, Alaska, and Paraguay. And then I guess the natives that we have to colonize as well, but we'll let our subjects take care of that eventually. Just hit 15 SOL, by the way, across the whole country. Very nice. And the Mexicans have hit 25 million GDP. They're a quarter of the way there to the challenge. Just got the all-important dynamite tech. And this is going to massively increase how much our mines produce. And because mines already create such a huge amount of GDP by themselves, it's going to be huge for us. Now, it's going to also spike the cost of our explosives by a ton, but that's okay for now. It won't be okay if it lasts too long, but it's okay for now. We'll get on fixing that, soon. It does mean that these explosives factories get suddenly immense profits because they have a huge bundle of new customers. But we also use explosives for our construction, and because we're paying for that, we don't want it to be too expensive. So we're going to fix that up real fast. We're just going to drop, honestly, 80, okay, that's too much, 60 explosive factories in Pennsylvania. That should be plenty.
You know what would have been smart? To build the explosives in my subjects, whose GDP I'm trying to increase. Oh well, I guess I'm kind of dumb. To be fair to me, it's quite important that we get our explosives price down, and relying on our subjects to actually employ up their industries may have been unwise had I done it.
Since I'm running out of debt here, which sounds like a good thing, it is a good thing, but it's indicative that I'm probably not spending enough money. So I'm actually just going to drop taxes, because I like to see high SOL numbers. I know that we're aiming for the 100 million GDP number in all of the subjects, but, I like to see big SOL numbers too. Sometimes you can have an issue where your buildings won't quite employ, and it's usually because they're not profitable anymore for a bit. But what you want to do is sometimes is if you know that that industry is going to be profitable, but it just needs some time, just subsidize it and eat the cost for a bit until the market reacts to the new supply of dynamite. So what's going to happen is I probably have mines around the country which have been failing to employ because dynamite was too expensive. This is maybe an extreme example of it because I'm now spending £200,000 on supporting this explosives factory. But basically, I'm waiting until the rest of the economy catches up to the new surplus of explosives. This is a bit of an advanced technique. You're going to want to understand a lot about your market before you start doing stuff like this, because this is very expensive. I don't want to be paying this much subsidies for, too long. But I know that this bounce is going to get better every week because the mines are going to re-employ and stuff. You see it's getting a little bit better each week. The mines are slowly re-employing and buying up the new surplus dynamite. To help with this, though, I am going to make a bunch of fertilizer factories. Or rather, fertilizer plants, because fertilizer will make the dynamite cheaper. Up to number 2 GDP per capita now. We're just behind Alaska, which, again, to be fair, these tiny population countries have a much easier time getting high GDP per capitas. We're very solidly number 1 GDP now. Almost, in fact, not quite double the British Raj, but almost double the British Raj. We are double Great Britain, at least. In terms of SOL, I think we're number 3. Yep, number 3. We're behind, I imagine, Belgium still, and Pontianak. Pontianak, I imagine, is just doing the weird government wages exploit thing that the AI cage does by accident. If you look here, I'm pretty sure all of their employment's going to be in this port. It appears to be the case. What's happening here, I explained it in a previous video, but I'll try to explain it again. What's happening here is that this country is almost certainly bankrupt. Yes, they are bankrupt and in default. So when a country goes bankrupt, they lose all their employment more or less. Well, not quite in such a way, but basically the country collapses more or less, right? And that causes the SOL to go down. It causes businesses to have to fire people. It causes problems, okay? But with a port, which is government owned, these will always employ because the wages are being paid out through the government budget, not through the business, through a private business. There's always government money to be printed. So that means that these people, these 15,000 people, are working in this port, being paid money from a government that's completely bankrupt, but they can just keep printing the money because there's no such thing as inflation in Victoria 3. Whereas the businesses over here, when you bankrupt, they're going to lose all their cash reserves and they're going to fire everyone because they want to save their money, right? That's why no one here is employed. They're constantly bankrupting. I mean, I say no one. There are some, but they're only slaves. That's really funny. I'm sorry. Quick tangent. Every single employee in this rice farm is enslaved. And that includes, presumably the owners. The local workforce. Dude, what? I'm sorry. Complete derail. There's one level of ownership in this rice farm which is owned by the local workforce, which is slaves. I had to take a screenshot. The screen went dark there, so I took a screenshot. I'm gonna send that to my Discord. What are they? Are they enslaving each other collectively? I don't know. What are they doing? I have to explain that one, man. But yeah, I guess that means they're making, like, are they making they don't have an income. Okay. I was gonna say, are they making, like, income off of owning the farm? What is happening here, man? Where are those dividends going? Pays £15 to the local workforce in dividends, but the local workforce can't make money because they're slaves. What? I think that money is actually getting deleted. I think that money is not going anywhere. Okay, regardless, back to the discussion of this little exploit. Because everyone in the port is getting paid from the government budget, the bankruptcy doesn't actually affect the payments, because the government will always be able to pay no matter what's happening, because when they go bankrupt, they delete all their loans and delete all their cash reserves. But then you can just take new loans to pay people with. So I don't know who the money's being borrowed from, but somebody is basically just giving away money to 15.9 thousand Indonesians in this port. Pretty crazy. You can see here by the member the explosives subsidized. Remember how it was costing me like £200,000? Well, now they're back to making £120,000 of balance each week. So, you know, part of this is because I added fertilizer to the market, but most of this is because the market caught up to the surplus of dynamite. So sometimes it can be good to just subsidize something to force it through and then let the market catch up. Sometimes. Not always. You need to be experienced with the game to know when. I have a pretty good instinct for it, maybe you do. One thing I always recommend for learning these games, you can listen to me yap about them all day, just play them and make mistakes and learn from the mistakes. If one time you try to do the subsidized strat to force a business to get its people in and then worry about the market correcting itself later, if that causes you to bankrupt, then you know, or at least have a better idea of when it's a bad idea to do so. You'll just learn through experience. There it is, #1 GDP per capita, 3.72. Remember, the alternative to getting 100 million GDP in each of these countries is to get them 5 GDP per capita, which is a lot. We might have to amend that, to be honest, to pull this off. We can see Mexico's at 2.93. Maybe something like 2.5 would be a better bet, but maybe that's too easy. Hard to say. Countries like Los Altos are going to be almost impossible to fix up, to be honest. Like, this is just... I don't know what we do about it. I really don't know what we do about them, because they're not going to employ in the right places. They're all just working in the port. This place is probably bankrupting, isn't it? No, okay, alright, it's not bankrupting. It's good. One thing we can do to help these guys out is I guess we can bankroll, like, all of them. I mean, you know, we can afford it. So sure, the only problem is it costs us influence, but we can make some rivals. Right? At least I think we can. No, we can't. We actually have rivaled everyone that we possibly can in the game. Okay. Well... that's unfortunate. Oh, looks like Emperor Norton died. I didn't notice. I am classically bad about this. Emperor Norton has died, but his heir is cautious, and that is amazing, because cautious gives you infamy generation down. It does cost us influence. We kind of like influence, but oh well. Also, Henry Norton here is a feminist, but we've already passed women's suffrage, so not very useful. But still, always good to get the women's suffrage, or rather the cautious trait. And women's suffrage, to be fair, but... check out Mexico here, 30 million GDP, by the way. We're well on the way to 100 million. A lot of this actually is their own effort to increase their GDP, by the way, which is cool. Even Brazil's 20 million. Having access to our market significantly increases their potential for GDP, because we provide so many goods for them to be able to use, so it's good that we make them into our market. I built up my army, by the way. We now have 167 battalions of mixed cavalry, shrapnel artillery, and skirmish infantry. I'm going to check real quick what the British have for their army, and then we're going to decide if we're going to fight them or not. The way you can check is, I was going to say you can do it through here and like doing all this stuff, but this is kind of an annoying way to do it because of all the tooltips. Instead, you can just click on any state where you think they have a barracks and click on it and check. Looks like they have the same tech as me. I think I'm willing to go for it, but ooh, I'm scared too though. I am truly scared. I don't know. We gotta lower our relations first, because actually right now we're too friendly to be able to declare war. We'll break our trade agreement, and I guess we can... I don't know, we could like do more, but I don't really want to expel diplomats. It's a waste of infamy, so let's not do that. One thing we really need, actually, is luxury clothes. We don't have any silk. So to fix that, we can probably just conquer like one Chinese state. It's funny to imagine, or maybe we can conquer Japan. That's actually a better bet, is if we just make a protectorate in Japan. This would get us all the silk we could ever ask for, and honestly some other stuff too. But we can just slap down like 100 silk plantations in Kansai and then call it a day. So we'll do that. Before we invade Japan, we're going to need more of a navy, though. So I just queued up, like, 160 more ships. Again, very overkill, but it's whatever. Like, we're not playing optimally here, like, at all. So definitely way more ships than I need, and we'll get to them eventually. You see here, we have, like, 2,500 construction points. That means that even when I build a ridiculous number of things, we still get around to building all of it in, like, 1 year. I guess a year and a half in this case. We're building a lot of stuff here, right? I mean, look how many pages of stuff's getting built at once. We're 5 pages deep and we're making progress. That's pretty good. You know, actually, we're doing a pretty good job getting the GDP per capita up to 5. I'm not sure we'll get them right to 5, but I mean, look at this, right? New Granada on 3.3. Mexico is on 3.09. I think these guys are probably not going to be as good. Yeah, so here we're at 2.42 for Guatemala. Not bad at all, but not as good as we need it to be. Obviously, Honduras is doing terribly. What is wrong with you, Honduras? Are you doing the port thing? What are they doing? What? Oh, because they're all working in bureaucracy. See, we can't do anything about this. The fact that they're all working in bureaucracy does not produce any goods. So they don't produce any GDP. They just eat government wages to produce bureaucracy. I can't do anything about that. So Honduras is kind of throwing, like, really hard. What about Nicaragua? How are they doing? Pretty good, 2.68. Yeah, okay. Costa Rica? 2.65. Yeah, so we're getting into, like, that 2.5 to 3 range. How about Brazil? 2.23, a little bit lower, which is reasonable. Probably because they're using a lot of slave labor. That's what I would guess for that. And here, 2.36. You know, again, 2.5 to 3 range. Maybe more like 2.25 to 3 range. But yeah, not bad, honestly. We're uplifting the people to at least some extent.
At this point, we ought to be honest with ourselves. Victoria 3 can be a bit of a slow and at times uninteresting game to get play-by-play highlights of. What I just showed you there with Honduras is actually the run killer for this challenge, which is to say that yes, if a nation locks up their entire population into being government bureaucrats, they'll never achieve any kind of impressive GDP. They'll just kind of sit there, throwing their budget away. Because they have almost no GDP, I can't really get them to a high GDP per capita nor 100 million GDP, and thus Honduras and Los Altos are lost causes. I can't destroy their bureaucracy either, nor can I reasonably expect to migrate in enough people there given their SOL will be significantly lower than everyone else's on account of all their pops working in bureaucracies. Besides that particular situation, every other country I'm building in will just take time to let the GDP climb. It is definitely the case that agriculture is better to build in these nations because I've spent so much time building up my own manufacturing. In fact, I've even gotten a bunch of MAPI bonuses which my subjects do not have, and because of that, my industries are untouchable. Thankfully though, I've totally neglected my agricultural sector, so we can do this. We can get the Americas to their rightful place. It will take a long time, since agriculture doesn't produce a ton of GDP. It was also around this time that I played without more commentary, just because I was running out of things to say and told myself I'd fix it in post. The classic cope of any lazy YouTuber. But anyway, I'll take you through some highlights and explain the broad economic strategy I've got going from 1890 onwards, and then we'll look over the world a bit. The first big move was the already in the works invasion of Japan. Acquiring Japan is huge for me because of all their silk and population. I'm kind of hoping, honestly, that those Japanese pops might move into my subject in South America so they can get a higher GDP. However, I may have done too good of a job of being attractive to migrants to really allow that to happen. I'd commentate on the war, but the Japanese very kindly chose to back down, giving me a massive new member of the power bloc for little effort. Immediately, I'll be putting up a ton of silk plantations in Japan, and using that new silk, I can start up a new luxury clothing industry. I'm also going to need rubber for the even better luxury clothing production method, and this is an opportunity for my South American subjects to shine, as they happen to have tons of rubber available. Beyond that, it's just a matter of continuing to build up stuff that I know I will be able to employ, like coffee. Especially in Brazil, coffee is great because there's pretty much permanent demand for it, and you can always export it to help with the price too. So long as my pops keep gaining standard of living, then the consumption of luxury drinks like coffee will continue to spiral upwards. I'm also focusing on cotton, which I certainly could produce locally, but making it in the Americas will let them have an opportunity to actually have an economy instead of me just dominating it. Over time, I'm slowly reducing autonomy of my subjects, and that's probably another mistake since it'll make them less likely to subsidize their railways if they're paying money to me, but also, I want the same color across the map, you know? I also invaded Alaska at the turn of the century, and in order to make the war end a bit faster, I invaded all of Russia too. I went after Canada a little while after, as I wanted to get them before their population ballooned too much and created an untenable infamy situation. It ended up costing me 46 infamy to get Canada, and that's after getting multilateral alliances for the reduced autonomy. Since I'm at war with Britain, I'll be grabbing some more stuff like their puppet of Haiti, who they granted most of the Caribbean to, and the Mosquito Kingdom. These are some of the last American subjects I need to acquire in order to control everyone in the Americas, so it'll be nice to get it all done at once. I ended up just baiting the British troops over the American front and then landing in London while no one was home. You've seen it a million times, do I need to explain how it works anymore? The war for Canada ended in May of 1908, and with that, pretty much all of the Americas are now a member of the Monroe Prosperity Doctrine. One thing I realize now is that I never actually showed myself creating the power block back in the beginning of the game, but yeah, I called it the Monroe Doctrine, in reference to the American policy of protecting their backyard from European intervention when possible. Here's a little overview of the world as of July of 1909, and we can see my absolute dominance over the Americas alongside Germany's dominance over Europe. I say that, they theoretically could dominate the continent, but the AI is a bit apprehensive to get aggressive, so they haven't really done much. We can see that India broke free, and I didn't notice when, so it happened sometime recently, I suppose. Most of the land stayed with Bengal for some reason, so there's a pretty big Bengali sultanate there surrounding a bunch of princely states. Here's the current top GDPs, and we can see that yes, of course, I am way ahead of everyone, but honestly, the AI is putting up a pretty good attempt. I've definitely noticed the AI being better than they've ever been, but I'm proud of our little Victoria 3 AI. It's doing something economically at least. Now we just need a more aggressive European continental AI that actually tries to dominate Europe. And then we'll be cooking, lads. By the way, as of September of 1909, I've got several of my subjects past the challenge requirements. Looking at the GDP per capita stats, I'm on top, naturally, but below we see many of my subjects. Colombia and Guatemala are above the 5 GDP per capita threshold, while my other subjects are quickly catching up. Like I've said before, the way I'm doing this is by just building up their agricultural goods, which my super rich American pops are consuming, creating demand, and allowing my puppets to have their own little cottage industries. Coffee, dyes, rubber, tea, and whatever else has near permanent demand is helping these puppets sail to economic victory. You can see which states are having a good time creating jobs by looking at the SOL map. Brazil is pretty green, and Colombia is also quite green, while less successful subjects like Argentina are more of a white color. Anyway, at this point, not too much more happened, but I wanted to secure even more of a consumer base for my puppets to sell to, so I made the Heavenly Kingdom a protectorate. Sure, they're all peasants, but even peasants consume goods. They just consume very few. Unfortunately for me, the Heavenly Kingdom capital is in Gansu, which is very difficult to get to. I'll have to actually fight through the hordes of Chinese peasants to reach the Heavenly capital, and that'll take some time. The war began in the fall of 1911, but didn't end until 1915. 4 years of fighting through China, but it was worth it for all those peasants. A little while later, in 1918, I put an end to the run, but not without going over the fate of the Americas, of course. In recognition of the great prosperity enjoyed across America now, I've renamed the power block to the Monroe Prosperity Sphere and colored it green because money. Check out my crazy SOL, by the way, over 25 average across almost 200 million pops. Very cool, very epic. Anyway, let's look over the success stories and failures of the Prosperity Sphere.
The goal of this run was to get all the American nations, as in the continental American nations, up to 100 million GDP or 5 GDP per capita. That proved to be significantly harder than I thought, but I may have also been shooting myself in the foot a little bit because I was playing too well with my own country. And what I mean by that is best demonstrated by a graph. This is Canada's population graph, and as you can probably guess, around here is where I took them away from Britain. You can see their population declining. It's much harder to build their country up when my country is stealing all of their population. If we look over here in Alberta, for example, they're losing, only a couple hundred people, to me, of course, but they barely have any people here to begin with. Same with, okay, not BC, but Saskatchewan's gaining people. Okay, maybe I'm just wrong. Maybe I am. But here in Ontario, this is where most of the population actually is. They're losing people. They're coming over to America because we have such high standard of living, especially in Quebec. That's a lot of people to lose, right? So it means that all these textile mills that I built in Ontario, they mostly can't employ. And that's because they don't have enough people and all the people are leaving. If this were able to employ, their GDP would probably hit like 100 million pretty easily. The other issue is that my own industries are kind of really powerful, and it makes it difficult for the industries in these other places to be profitable enough. So I think Brazil actually has a good textile mill. See this one here, this is good. This is making good jobs for them. But maybe there are some businesses where it's not doing as well. So smaller businesses will always have a disadvantage against bigger ones because of the throughput difference. It's kind of like real life, I guess you could say. So that means that I chose to focus with Brazil on things like coffee, because I don't really make any coffee, and that was quite wise. Look at this tea plantation. It's 2,000 balance, which I know we're not really looking at balance, we're looking at GDP, but this makes a lot of really good GDP, 167,000 worth right there. Same with the coffee. Not quite as profitable as the tea, but I think that was the smarter play. The big thing for Brazil especially is rubber, by the way. But being able to find goods that I don't make and then making them over here so that they could actually get profits would have been smarter. I chose to be too powerful, basically, economically. But what would have been smart would have been if over here in Pennsylvania, New York, this whole region, I only made like steel and I made explosives and I made fertilizer and stuff like that. Things that are not as, well, I was gonna say not as good for GDP, but actually these are amazing for GDP. Maybe I should have done things like farms over here, but then I wouldn't be powerful enough to really control these guys is the issue. Basically, you don't want to be too dominant economically, otherwise it gets in the way of your ability to build up your allies. Nonetheless though, several of these nations we did manage to bring to our 5 GDP per capita goal. For example, Brazil, you're at number 6 GDP per capita, and you can see most of our puppets are actually in this list. Bilua is, I believe, a glitch, because this is a weird thing where sometimes, like, well, not really a glitch per se, but it's just a weird, super small sample size. It's giving an unreasonable GDP per capita based on the fact that, like, nothing's being produced here. In fact, what is even being made in this market? There's nothing in this market, from what I can tell. So, they're not making anything, and they get to have a high GDP per capita because these things have a high price, and that's basically it. I'm gonna not count them. Okay, that doesn't count. They don't have 17 GDP per capita. That's BS. Colombia at 7.4. Let's take a look at them. They've got 18 million GDP. Look at that graph. By the way, you can see when I start doing my investments. This is probably when I built up their opium, is this big line right here. You can see the population is 2.45 million with some growth and 22 SOL. That's number 2 behind me, of course, at 25, but that's crazy. Well done, Colombia. It's probably all the opium. Yes, it is basically just the opium giving them huge standard of living through all the profits. Beyond that, I mean, I think that's all they're making. They're just making opium. And I guess over here, I think I put some textile mills, just a handful. So they have some random industries here and there, but the big thing is just all this opium, which is wonderful. In terms of who's next, we've got me at 6.48, which is pretty good. Then Guatemala. And I was surprised because Guatemala is very small, but we were able to get them a really nice rubber industry. As you can see here, this is a pretty good building. And also the dyes. This is also a relatively good building. So through the power of, looks like dyes and rubber mostly, the textile mills are barely employed. I tried to give them textile mills, but they didn't really employ up. They weren't really able to get too good of a GDP, but the GDP per capita is quite nice. For Guatemala, this is pretty good. Next up is Denmark, who is not in my power block. Or, yeah, they were for a bit. I don't know if I'll show it earlier in the video. They were for a bit, but then Germany wanted them, and I was like, you know what, I'm not going to bother fighting for Denmark, so I didn't bother. We already looked at Brazil, but they're next in the list. Then there's Japan, which is funny. Japan is not one of the nations I had in mind for turning into a super economic powerhouse, but look at this. That is an insane graph, and I always love seeing stuff like this in Victoria 3. Basically, they were in total isolation for most of the game. Then I made them a protectorate, and they just completely destroyed, like, the graph. It's crazy how much it goes up. This is because they suddenly have access to all of my goods and all of my consumers, so they can actually make stuff. It did help a bit that I put down a lot of silk, because the reason why I made them a protectorate was I wanted their silk. So I went and just made a bunch of silk plantations, and that probably gave them a little bit of a boost. And then they were able to independently achieve this amazing GDP. Not bad at all for an AI. Number 3 in the world, in fact, behind a very powerful Germany. I'm probably going to, again, show it off in the video earlier, but GDP on Germany here, quite high, quite impressive. Honestly, for the AI, very well done. This is not bad at all. I don't know how they managed to get the Super Germany tag here, or not tag, but Super Germany form. I don't know what they did to pull it off, but it looks like they're even going even further into France. Probably not with any war goals, though, if I know this game. Yeah, you know, they're just fighting against France on a huge front line just because they want to ban slavery in Egypt. Classic Victoria 3 AI. Regardless, the next in the list of GDP per capita is Ecuador. So you also got them over 5. Ecuador, I believe, is doing dyes. Yes, looks like they're just doing dyes. So just whatever agricultural goods I could give them that I didn't have personally worked really well. Again, rubber being the MVP here. Rubber is something that I don't have in the United States, so the fact that I can make it over here means there's no competition, so they can just easily make a ton of money on their rubber, which lets them get a high GDP because they can actually produce a large number of goods. Next up is Peru, Bolivia at 5.02. So I think they also, again, are mostly rubber, but maybe also opium? No, rice. Interesting. I don't remember building this rice. Maybe it was my private sectors, but yeah, rubber. Common theme here for South America, just lots of rubber. Very useful. Next is Costa Rica. They did not manage to get to the 5.0 GDP per capita goal, but they did pretty well anyway. Looks like it's this coal mine. Nope, never mind. There's no one employed there. Maybe it's just Lily Coffee. There's basically no one living in Costa Rica, so that means that with only a handful of successful agricultural businesses, they can get a pretty high GDP per capita which gives them a 17.4 standard of living, by the way. Pretty good. In terms of total failures, because we looked at the successes now, that's pretty much all the good ones. There are a couple of horrible failures, though, and that would be Honduras. So what's happening here, if we look, okay, they have 57,000 GDP, and it is a terrible graph. They used to be at about 1 million, and then they dropped to nothing, putting them at number 146 in the world with 0.5 GDP per capita. What happened here? Okay, it's very simple. The AI built 2 bureaucracies, and that's basically everyone in the country employed right there. Bureaucracies do not produce any GDP, they just make bureaucracy. So because of that, basically this country is screwed. They have some people working in the railway, so this is what little GDP they can make, basically is this transportation. They got a university, again, no GDP. Bureaucracy, no GDP. Army, no GDP. Port, no GDP. And then everything else is completely unemployed. No employees in any of these buildings, as you can see. So that means that basically they don't produce anything. A similar thing was happening in Nicaragua, I believe. Yeah, in this case though, it's just ports. So again, nothing here is employed, zero productivity. Looks like they're maybe trying to employ, but they just can't. Everyone is just working in the port. And that doesn't make any GDP. So Nicaragua, if we check here, has also a nothing GDP per capita and a 4.8 standard of living. Absolutely crazy. Same story in Mesquita, only employing in the port. This is a consequence of the AI just being really, really dumb, and I can't really do anything about it besides annex them. I didn't set any rules against annexing members of the America region, I guess, but it would feel against the spirit of the challenge to do that, to just annex everyone, because then I could just annex everyone in the whole country, or in the whole continent, and then there would be nothing to worry about. In terms of people that went middle of the road, we have places like Venezuela. I think in this case, I just couldn't get them an industry that was profitable enough to really get a lot of employees and make a good amount of GDP. So if you look here, like I gave them some textiles, but the textiles are outcompeted by me. I gave them some groceries and it's doing okay, but this does not have wheat in the market. Like I couldn't really give them anything good, and they only have a little bit of rubber. I could build up their oil. The problem is that I have already built up my oil by this point, because America also has a ton of oil. So I'm not going to be able to make very much profitable oil over here in Venezuela, but that would have been smart to maybe let them control the oil trade. Regardless, it was a very fun playthrough. It was a different way to play, and I enjoyed playing it this way. Had we focused more on building up our own country, I could have easily gone to maybe like 3 billion GDP, to be honest. But, you know, we weren't playing optimally, we were choosing to play suboptimally for the purpose of a little challenge. And ultimately, it was fun. I was thinking about before finishing off trying to pass consumption-based taxation and just having like a zero tax country to see how much SOL we could get. But 25.1 is honestly pretty good. It was 25.8 earlier because we were passing a tax law and we got the philanthropic giving, or whatever it's called, event, where you gave yourself +1 SOL across the whole country. So if not for that, this would basically be our peak. I do love that in the list of countries with high SOLs, it's basically like mostly my puppets. You know, it's USA, Colombia, El Salvador, Brazil, Ecuador, Los Altos, and then a couple of other people that are not part of our market. In terms of the GDP per capita though, it's almost all people in our market. Again, we're not counting Bolivia, that's BS. Colombia, United States, Guatemala. Denmark is a former member, so I guess we can count them, but not really. Brazil, Empire of Japan, Ecuador, Peru, Costa Rica. All of them, except for Denmark and the bullshit Bolivia, are all part of my market. So we did a great job building up the GDP per capita, and I'm quite proud of it. Regardless, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for your time.